Hello, this is Mahdi with the Caged Canary podcast. I want to talk today about mirrors. Mirrors is something that's often thought of when people talk about magic and visualize magic. They often imagine that magic is produced or caused or explained by smoke and mirrors. And mirrors, to me, have a very important part in magic, but not so much on the stage. Obviously, mirrors have been used on stage for many, many, many years. It goes back, I don't know, maybe more than 200 years ago. Probably more than 200 years ago. That's not what we're talking about today. We're talking about how to use mirrors off stage when you're alone in your room and you're practicing. Now, it's often recommended that you practice in front of a mirror. That way, you can see yourself and what you're doing and how it looks. And obviously, that's great advice. We should all be practicing in front of mirrors. I know a lot of people who develop bad habits by using mirrors, and so I want to talk about those and also how many people misuse the mirror. So let's get into that. One of the bad habits that people pick up, I find a lot, is that they get into the habit of blinking. And what this means is when they do a secret move or technique and they watch themselves practicing in front of the mirror, they unconsciously blink at that moment so that they don't see themselves doing the move. And this is something that carries on in their performances. And it's quite funny to see. And this is something I've seen a lot. Magicians performing, and when it's time for them to do a move, they have this guilty blink. And it's just something that's been ingrained in them by doing it thousands of times in front of the mirror. They just subconsciously, they're not even in control of it. They're not aware of it. They blink when they do a technique, and this is because they're blinking when they're doing it in front of the mirror so that they see it less. I don't know how to explain this other than it's real and it happens. It sounds quite ridiculous, but it is a real thing, and when you do practice in front of a mirror, you almost pick up that bad habit without realizing it. I know I've picked it up before. I mean, I hope that's not how I am today, but I know that I picked it up previously, and virtually anybody who's practiced in front of a mirror ever has picked it up at some small level. So the way to combat that is to only practice in front of a mirror when you need to look at a specific technique. Another thing about practicing in front of a mirror is it doesn't give you a full view of what you're doing, and it's also a distorted view. We have to remember that when we're performing for people, they are looking where we are directing them to look. They look at where we want them to look. Hopefully, I mean, if you know what you're doing, that's what's supposed to happen. And when you are watching yourself in a mirror, the thing that people do is they either blink at those crucial moments, those moments where they're doing a secret technique, or they'll just turn away and look where they assume the audience is going to be looking. And this is also a weak area that I find many magicians, they just pick up that habit. It's not a good habit to have. So again, do not become too reliant on a mirror. Use it when you have to, and don't use it when you don't need to. You don't always need to practice in front of a mirror. I think it's quite odd, to be honest, to watch yourself practice, because when you're performing in real life, most likely there will be no reflection unless you're performing somehow on stage and there's a monitor and you're being recorded and you're watching yourself in the monitor, but it's still weird, and it takes away your attention when you're just focusing on yourself. So a big part of magic and any performance art is choreography. You want to have everything sort of mapped out before you're going on stage so that you know where you're going and you don't have to check yourself through a monitor. Now, of course, the first couple times you do stuff, you're blocking, you're learning the routine, you're learning how to block and where you're going to be stepping, how you're going to be moving. But what I'm really talking about is as you progress further and further and you are, performing in front of a real audience, and you're hopefully are getting this piece to become a polished piece, you don't want to have that weird thing where you're focusing on yourself. I mean, I don't think anybody performs with a mirror on stage so that they can watch themselves. That would be really weird. But I know that many people concentrate on themselves if there's a monitor. And it's, I think it's just a human thing. Anytime that we're on stage, we're sort of checking out how we look. If you ever watch those videos of people being captured on video at a baseball stadium or a basketball, football game, something like that, they almost are always, they're pointing at the big screen and they're watching themselves, but they're not looking at the camera. They're not even really concerned about finding the camera. They're sort of just checking themselves out. And I think it's just a very natural human thing to want to check ourselves out. So don't become too reliant on a mirror. Another thing about the mirror, so I find people use the mirror incorrectly. Most people just use the mirror that is totally flat, and what I mean by that, it's standing vertical. It's not at an angle. So they're just looking at themselves in the mirror, and it's totally straight. And this is a problem. And the reason this is a problem is because this distorts the image that they are getting. So I was talking about the mirrors and how most people just line them up totally vertical and work like that. And it's a big problem because when you're looking at a mirror that way, it distorts what you're looking at. When you're looking at something straight on, for example, your face, and a mirror is totally straight, it'll appear the way that it's supposed to be when you're looking at it in the mirror. But as soon as you look down or up, the image becomes distorted. So when you're practicing and you're looking at your hands in the mirror or the rest of your body or something that's farther away that's not lined up with your eye line, it's going to be distorted just because of the line, the angle of the light reflecting off of the mirror is not going to be what the audience would see in real life. So what you want to do is you want to angle that mirror down towards you. The top of the mirror should be closer to you and the bottom of the mirror should be farther away from you. That way the mirror is angled towards you, and when you look at it, it'll sort of look like it's bouncing top down. I don't know how to describe it, but it's much more realistic. When people look at you, they're not looking at you straight on. They're always looking down at your hands and down at the action. Whether you're on stage or whether it's close up, they're always looking down. And that angle, just imagine that line pointing down. So you want to duplicate it with the mirror, and when you do that, you will get a true image of what is actually happening. What you see in the mirror, what you see your hands doing is much closer to what the audience sees than when the mirror is just straight and vertical. So again, this is just a very small thing, but it makes a very big difference when you find out about it, because the last thing you want to do is be practicing a move in your bedroom and you think that you're doing it right, you think that it's invisible, and then you're doing it in front of people and you wonder, oh, why am I being caught? Why are my magician's friends telling me that I'm flashing, or they're able to see the secret technique? It's because probably when you were looking at it, you were not looking at it the right way. So just something to keep in mind. Get that mirror and angle it downwards towards your hand. Now, most people just use one mirror. I would recommend using multiple mirrors. Most people who have multiple mirrors have this three-piece mirror set which they lay out on their table. And again, the biggest problem with that is it's straight. It's a straight mirror. It just folds open, and there's three panels, one that's straight, one that angles like a 45-degree angle to the left, and one that does that 45-degree angle. What is the opposite of a 45-degree angle? I'm not too sure. My math is not too good, but it's in the opposite direction on the right side. And so the theory behind that is so that you can see how the move looks and the techniques look from your left side and your right side, where people will be sitting on those wings. And again, that image that you're seeing in that mirror is going to be distorted. So instead of getting a 3-panel mirror, I would suggest getting 3 mirrors, small mirrors, and always angle them downwards. Even if they're going from the side, just angle them downwards. That way you can see what the audience is seeing instead of seeing what the mirror is seeing. And for those of you who don't necessarily understand what I'm talking about when I'm talking about mirrors distorting the image, just get a camera or your phone and take some photos of a mirror looking down towards your hands in the card table through the mirror from where you're sitting, and angle it in different ways, and then have one of your friends sit on the other side of the table taking those photos flat on and angling down towards you, and you will see those differences in the photos right away. It's a perspective thing. It's just a perspective thing. It's sort of really hard to explain without visuals. This is a podcast, so there's no visual component, so I can't provide you images. But I'll probably write an article or something and leave some photos so that you can really understand what I'm talking about, because it sounds like a small detail, but it makes a huge difference in the end when you are practicing in front of a mirror. Again, you don't want to be practicing in front of a mirror all the time, but when you do, make sure that it's a mirror that is actually benefiting you. Outside of mirrors, and this was going to be a whole other thing, so I'm not going to go too much into it, but a great way to watch yourself when you're practicing, much better than a mirror, is a mirror is there for automatic correction. You can really see in the moment where your hand is, where your fingers are, where the objects are. You can really see that and judge, where you need work. But the next tool that we'll discuss down the road is the use of a camera. A camera is totally ruthless. It will capture everything. A camera is almost not fair in a way, because a camera captures everything and keeps everything sharp, whereas the human eye does not. The human eye is always focusing on different moments and different areas at different times. It's a lot more forgiving than a camera. A camera doesn't blink. It doesn't get distracted. Everything stays sharp and stays focused, which is why you see people doing such shady video editing and what we call camera tricks in the business. When there is magic on TV, they're manipulating the use of the camera, probably because their methods aren't good enough, but also because they can't use standard techniques that would work in the real world in front of a camera sometimes. So just, these are all things that need to be considered. One of the really, I'm going to get off on a tangent. So one of the things about cameras as well is people used to be able to go back and play it over and over again. One of the things I'm excited about is live video that can't be replayed, which I think is going to allow magicians in the future to be able to do stuff that they usually do in real life, but they sort of had to get rid of for TV. But that is the subject for another podcast. And obviously, mirrors are a huge secret in magic. Mirrors have been used on stage for a variety of purposes, which we will not be going in here, but it's just important to note that the use of mirrors is not necessarily always to hide things. It's usually just a tool in magic, and it's a tool that has many purposes, and so we shouldn't forget about these tools, and we should really figure out how to use them. So again, if you are looking at getting a mirror, maybe you have a mirror and it doesn't work for you, what I usually do, I have a very long mirror. It's sort of I guess you would call it a dressing mirror. It's a mirror that people put in their room, and usually they prop it up against the wall, and they, can check out how they look wearing different clothes. And I have one of those mirrors, and when I practice, I just set up my table right in front of the mirror, and I prop up the mirror leaning up against the table at an angle so that I have that angle mirror working for me the way that I want, and also I can move that table, move the mirror around. It's not as safe as it should be. I sort of wedge the mirror in between the table and the wall, just so it doesn't slide and shatter. But if you want, probably a much better solution would be to get a little tabled mirror. I saw one at IKEA the other day. It's a little tabled mirror, and it actually is on a like a swivel stand, so you can actually turn the mirror the way that you want it to be. It sort of looks like one of those mirrors that women use sometimes for applying makeup, and they can sort of angle it in different ways, and it's on a stand, and there's two little arms holding the mirror in place. I don't know all the terminology here, but one of those mirrors works wonders. Again, you're going to want to get a mirror that doesn't do any distortion or any magnification. Many of those mirrors do have magnification. You just want just the most plain, basic mirror that you can get, and prop that up. It should work. It should work very well for you. Again, you also want to try to get a mirror that isn't too wide. You're much better off with multiple mirrors than an extremely wide mirror, because again, as soon as you're looking at that reflection and the mirror is angled and you're looking down or to the side, that you're going to have distortion. It's just the way that the light is bouncing off the mirror, and the image that you're having is distorted. It's people think that distortion only occurs when mirrors are designed to create distortions, like in a house of mirrors at a carnival, or if it's a magnifying mirror, or something like that. The truth is that every single mirror distorts, and you really have to be able to focus on one point at a time in those mirrors. So again, you don't try to do everything with one mirror, or if you only have one mirror, that's fine. You just have to move your body in order to see the different angles, and just practice by angling your body in different ways so that you can see it from all the different directions without moving the mirror. But if you don't want to do that, get multiple mirrors. Much better than having a super wide mirror. And just check those spots and make sure those mirrors are angled. So this is sort of just, an obscure little piece of information. I hope it provides value to you guys. As I said, this is just a short little podcast. We're going to be returning next week with a much larger one. I'm not too sure what we're going to be discussing, but I think it'll be good. Uh, so until next time, I hope you guys enjoy this and get something out of it, and maybe you will start incorporating a mirror in your practice. So thank you for listening, and I will see you next week, or you will be hearing me next week. I guess I won't be hearing you, but you will be you will be hearing me. So anyways, have a good night and good luck.